Good evening, and before we begin, please subscribe to the channel to follow this astonishing account. What you're about to hear isn't mere theory or fiction, it's a real testimony unearthed from the darkest corners of the internet, shared by Eduardo Vasconcelos, a former priest determined to expose a terrible secret of the Vatican, one that could alter our understanding of everything. The story unfolded in the 1980s. Eduardo, a man of faith, joined the seminary with a hopeful heart, believing his mission was to serve and help others. He witnessed genuine miracles, charity, and blessings. Yet, there was an undercurrent, a silent shadow looming over the church's high domes. At first, Eduardo dismissed the signs. The Vatican, after all, was the pinnacle of Christian faith on earth. But as years passed, certain ceremonies seemed less innocent, with hidden symbols on altars, prayers in unknown tongues, and tense expressions on the faces of cardinals. There was an eerie duality. Then Eduardo met Father Giovan, a Brazilian with over a decade of unrestricted access to the Vatican. They became fast friends, but Eduardo noticed Giovan never spoke of what truly occurred within the Vatican walls, always deflecting the subject. Until one evening, after a few glasses of wine, Eduardo pressed Giovan directly. Giovan's silence broke into an uneasy laugh, not one of humor, but of nervous tension. "Not even the Pope knows everything," he said, avoiding Eduardo's gaze. That cryptic response was a shock to Eduardo's system. "Why doesn't the Pope know everything?" Eduardo probed. Giovan warned of the dangers in knowing too much, but after much persistence, he revealed a startling fact. "Did you know the Vatican controls some of the world's largest astronomical observatories?" It seemed like a tangent, but Giovan insisted it was central. The Vatican's deep, inexplicable interest in space, stars, and something beyond Earth was a known secret, never openly discussed. Intrigued, Eduardo delved into ancient church archives, seeking astronomers' accounts, and that's when everything started to fall into place. Many early church scientists studied the heavens not just out of passion but for a greater, closely monitored reason. As Eduardo asked around, other priests reacted with suspicion, eerie silences, and some even seemed frightened. A certain elderly Monsignor offered a chilling remark: "If you knew what I know, you'd never sleep again." One day, as Eduardo wandered the Vatican's corridors, he saw something unforgettable, a being that seemed human but wasn't. Its skin was too pale, hair unnaturally light, and eyes an almost translucent blue. There was an otherworldly quality to it. Clad in a robe shifting between white and gray with a strange bracelet on its wrist, the being turned slightly, offering Eduardo a smile that felt all-knowing, a smile that suggested secrets beyond Eduardo's comprehension. That night, Eduardo barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of the Vatican's obsession with observatories, unanswered questions, and forbidden conversations. That being, what was it? Could there be a connection between the angels of the Bible and something ancient and unknown? Eduardo's research into scriptures deepened, and what he found was frightening. Texts that could be misinterpreted as something much larger, describing fiery chariots descending from the sky and beings in brilliant attire with eyes like flames. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 4-5, describing visions of radiant creatures within rotating wheels, particularly intrigued Eduardo. Some believe this biblical passage hints at something beyond religion. Eduardo's growing conclusion was unsettling. The Vatican was aware, holding information that would never reach the public, perhaps since the Church's inception, keeping such knowledge confined to a select few. The more Eduardo investigated, the more he felt watched. Strange presences, glances turning away at the last second, hurried footsteps following him, paranoia or an attempt to stop him from uncovering the truth. Then, one night, a mysterious envelope appeared under his door with a handwritten note: "Stop asking, Eduardo." A shiver ran down his spine. He was treading on dangerous ground, but he couldn't ignore what he had seen and felt. He had gone too far to turn back now. The burning question remained: what exactly is the Vatican hiding? Why so much secrecy? Why so much fear? And most importantly, who was that being in the Vatican corridors? It wasn't the last time Eduardo encountered it. The next time was worse. Obsessed with what he had seen, Eduardo returned to the ancient archives of the secret library, only to find something unexpected. An elderly priest, Monsignor Berard, approached him with a warning. "You're meddling with things you shouldn't, Father Eduardo." But there was a tone that suggested he wanted to help, not deter him. Before leaving, he uttered, "Look into the files from 1962. You'll find something there." Spending the night poring over the 1962 records, Eduardo discovered a document marked "Highly Confidential." The title was vague, manuscript, but the content was devastating. It detailed a meeting between members of the Holy See and a select group of Vatican astronomers discussing something called Project Lu, with the most harrowing part being references to encounters with non-terrestrial entities. The documents revealed a discovery made decades prior, locked away tightly, the knowledge of beings that weren't human and the centuries-long contact with these entities. Eduardo felt cold sweat as he read descriptions of these beings. Tall, pale skin, very light hair, and vibrant eyes. Eerily similar to the one he had seen, dressed in garb reminiscent of ancient biblical texts. Eduardo's questions grew, but now the attention was tangible. Priests avoided him, or pretended not to understand. But one, young Father Antonio, pulled him aside in a dark corner, voice trembling. "They're everywhere, always have been." Before Eduardo could ask more, hurried footsteps echoed, and Antonio vanished into the shadows. The man in the gray suit, the one who had been trailing Eduardo, appeared, said nothing, just stared, a silent warning to cease. Eduardo fled quickly, heart racing. He knew he was too close to the truth. These beings, what were their intentions? Why had the church maintained contact for so long? The answer came from an unexpected source, a diary hidden among ancient books, written by a cardinal over 100 years ago. "They are not angels, they are guardians." Eduardo grappled with the implications. Guardians of what? That night, he awoke to a strange noise in his room. The same being stood silhouetted in the doorway. Eduardo was paralyzed with cold as the being raised a hand, seemingly sending a silent message. Images flooded his mind: space, stars, colossal structures not of Earth, visions beyond our time. The Vatican as he knew it was built over something ancient. When Eduardo blinked, the being was gone, but he was changed. Obsessed with his vision, Eduardo revisited the archives, re-examining biblical texts and finding surprising references: ancient luminous beings, not spirits, but physical entities with technology far surpassing ours. The Vatican had always known, monitoring these beings and shielding the world from the truth. Now Eduardo was in deep trouble. The men in gray suits were closing in. His room was ransacked, his files scattered. The Vatican wanted to silence him. Eduardo decided to escape, but not without leaving a record. On a silent night, he wrote down the truth and hid his manuscript in the Roman underground, where few dared to venture. If something happened to him, at least the truth would remain. But he didn't anticipate what came next. An anonymous letter with a handwritten warning: "You cannot escape." Eduardo realized he would never be safe, but he couldn't disappear without sharing the truth. He took the leap, fleeing the Vatican and seeking out journalists brave enough to uncover his findings. When he finally found a willing reporter, something terrifying occurred. Before Eduardo could speak, the journalist's eyes widened. "I know who you are, and you're in danger." Eduardo's skin prickled. How did this man already know? The reporter revealed a dossier: leaked documents, blurred photographs, reports of priests disappearing after asking the same questions. Eduardo understood then, he should never have started this investigation. It was too late. The Vatican knew his whereabouts. Outside, a black van stopped. Men emerged swiftly. The reporter urged Eduardo to escape out the back. Eduardo ran, knowing this was his only chance to evade capture. But did he succeed? Eduardo Vasconcelos' name vanished from Vatican records, his diary never found. Only a few copies of his manuscript circulate on the internet. Are they real? Now, the lingering question is, what does the Vatican truly hide?